Hi, my name is Carolyn Klauba and I'm the Stewardship Director for the Sourlands Conservancy. I want to talk to you about stewardship. So, ecological stewardship is the active participation in caring for the land to benefit our local ecosystem. And a steward shop is a workshop about stewardship, and generally steward shops take place at somebody's home and the work that they're doing at their home to benefit the local ecosystem. This year, we really want to focus on Sourlands Conservancy members that are taking active steps to reduce their lawn and replace their lawn with native herbaceous and woody plants that will benefit their local ecosystem. Some of these members went whole hog in and they fenced in a huge area of land and they did a really big restoration project on their property. Other members have done it in smaller bites, little bit by little bit, taking up the lawn and planting in natives. We really want to encourage everyone to be part of this stewardship initiative. Everybody can make a difference. So please join us in learning about how to reduce your lawn, planting native plants, and saving the Sourlands. Today I'm here with Andrew Plunkett, and we're going to be talking about reducing your lawn and planting native plants. So Andrew, can you tell us why you decided to take the grass up on your property and start planting plants here?
All right, so I took the grass up because we know that it's an ecological desert. So I wanted to do something that's beneficial for the environment, but also make it look nice. So I decided to pull up the grass. And with that, pulling up the grass, I decided to plant plants that were year-round interest. So I planted a bunch of plants that would bloom in the spring, middle of summer, and the fall. And a lot of times I focused on less popular plants to benefit the environment and to benefit different species. So a lot of our species are niche specialists. And again, turf grass doesn't do anything for them. So by doing this, not only are we providing food for insects and birds year-round, but also for larval stages of insects that need to be underground or in the leaf litter. And so that was the big driver for me, is the environmental aspect to help our ecosystems here in Hopewell.
I see that you're a river-friendly resident. So does that mean that there was runoff coming off of your turf and you planted these plants as some sort of buffer? What did you do to earn that?
So in the front, I decided to start with the front strip to catch the runoff, knowing that it was going to take me maybe a little bit to progress and do the whole project. So I started with the front to catch that runoff that usually leaves and goes down our drains and floods our rivers and streams. So I decided to do the front first. And the river friendlies from the Watershed Institute, and you had to do a questionnaire for that, several questions about do you have native plants, do you mow, how much do you mow, I believe, and do you have bird baths and things like that. So I qualified for it, and I absolutely wanted to advertise it and create that awareness for my neighbors as well. So this is in front of the fence, so I chose plants that hopefully would keep deer away. Deer don't like goldenrod, they do not like Penstemon digitalis. I do have a couple non-natives like catmint, but are great pollinators, fur pollinators. So I tried to keep plants like bee balm and most plants that deer do not like, because obviously they're a huge problem for native gardeners. So this is in front of the deer protection, so I needed something that would survive. I do have some things that are not deer resistant, but my hope was to plant enough stuff around it that it would deter them and hopefully they would eat it. And it seems to work. Not much has got munched on all year besides some asters, so nothing really here has been eaten yet.
So I know that you said you're trying to support the insects throughout their entire life cycle by leaving leaf litter down, but do you also leave your plant stalks up for them to lay their eggs and overwinter?
Yep. So I usually don't even touch them unless they're coming over to the road. And the most I would do is cut them down to about 2 feet or 3 feet for those solitary bees. So there's something to nest in over winter. That's usually important as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing for a lot of homeowners that they don't necessarily think about is that entire life cycle, like
Right.
you said, where we need the host plant and we need a plant, for some of these insects to overwinter in. So making sure that you have a wide variety of different species and letting those leaves alone and leaving the stems alone is so critically important to really supporting our pollinators and all of our insect species.
Right. And the stuff I do cut down, I put in the garden, and it decomposes, and so this way adds nutrients back to the soil and provides habitat again.
All right, so I see that you have a fence here. Can you tell me about the fence that you created?
Yeah, so I was trying to do something that's minimal, try and be environmental in a lot of ways, and so I was trying to do my own unique thing here, and using bamboo. One of my neighbors has bamboo, so they let me cut it down, and I use that to make my deer protection, and so far so good. It's also pretty cool because I've seen bees nesting inside the bamboo that cracks. So I'll see like paper wasps, I think. I forget. But I've seen a lot of insects using them, and so it's a way to resource reduction on top of doing something beneficial and making my native garden.
Awesome. So let's go for a walk inside.
All right.
So Andrew, when we were out in front, you told me that this whole area was turf, correct?
Correct.
Wow. So clearly it's not turf anymore. So what was your process for turning this area from turf into a native plant restoration?
So I stripped section by section, actually. So I dug up the turf, which was good turf grass. So I used that actually, and I transplanted all the turf grass to my backyard where there was dead spots. So I would use a flat shovel and I would strip it section by section and cut it in nice sizes, equal sizes, so it was easy to transport into the backyard. And then after I got section by section done, let's say I did like 5 feet worth and a whole length, I would put down cardboard, which I got the cardboard from Costco's, from BJ's. I got the slip sheets, so that was no cost there. And then I would put down mulch on top, well, wood chips, and the wood chips were also free. You can call any tree company and they'll deliver, but you should have enough room for 10 yards or so, because they usually deliver 10 to 20 yards, but you can get it for free. So the cardboard through those big box stores, the mulch that would go, or the wood chips that would go on top, and then I would let that sit for 2 weeks or so, to make sure it would kill everything underneath. Because if you start cutting into it a day later or the same day, some of those weeds and turf grass that you didn't get to might start popping up through, and in the long run make it a lot more difficult. So I waited a week or two, a little bit more sometimes, to let it all die out, and then I would start planting my natives. And I did it strip by strip over the course of 2 months. I did it by hand, just because it was the pandemic and kind of had some time, but I mean, you can use a turf cutter to get it done. Yeah, so that was the whole process there.
So how did you learn to do this? Like, whether it was removing your grass and then the cardboard and the wood chips, was there any resources that you used, or was it just something that you had logically come to that conclusion? If we're asking folks to take their grass out and turn it into a native garden, having those kind of resources and knowing where to start looking would be really helpful for folks.
Yeah, I started just looking up how to convert lawns to meadows. Not that I did a meadow, I wanted something in between, but that's what I researched on YouTube, and I saw cardboard come up a lot, so I thought that was interesting. So I gave it a shot, and it worked really well. This is its second year, and I really don't get any weeds, too many, just here and there. But I used resources like you guys, the Sourlands Conservancy. I used Phobos. I used YouTube tutorials, and then in designing it, I just kind of did what I wanted to do. But the how-to, I just used the internet and just took ideas from different parties, different individuals, different nonprofits and kind of blended it into how I wanted to do it.
So did you have a plan for the types of plants that you wanted? Like, did you imagine something in your mind or follow any type of guideline? I know Jersey Friendly Yards, they have some, garden layouts with plant lists. Or was it something where you had seen a plant that you like, or did you just happen to come upon plants that were in need of rescuing, like they were, dying of dehydration at a garden center or anything like that? Like, how did you come about choosing the plants, or were they just given to you through, plant sharing or anything like that?
Yeah, so I really it was kind of just pick and choose. So I would first, figure out what I want: full sun, partial sun, dry, wet, whatever. There wasn't a set template I used, as you can probably tell. I kind of just looked at my yard and figured what would work. Some of the plants I bought, and some of them I got from the native plant swap group that we have. So some of it was like very intentional, like this area right here, when I first did it, was super dry. It was the driest part. It was like concrete. So I put, prickly pear cactus and other plants at like drier areas. And then from there, I just really went near my pathways. I wanted shorter plants. And then further from my pathways, I went a little bit taller. So that's my really only design, is just shorter plants near the pathways and larger plants more towards the core and areas not near pathways. But there's no set design. I kind of like I just call it controlled chaos. And I just like picking and choosing and seeing what works. And if some plants I've chosen don't work in that area, for whatever reason, I choose a different plant. But there's no set design. And a lot of the plants I chose were less popular plants. I wanted to choose plants that maybe not everybody plants. Purple coneflower is a popular one. So I do have some in there, but I wanted to focus on things that a lot of people don't have, and I wanted to keep it so this way it would benefit year round. My garden really comes alive more in the spring and then in the fall, because a lot of people plant for now, like August, July, August. And so I wanted to support the species that needed it on either end, those early season pollinators and insects, and later season.
So what motivated you to get started with the plant swap? Because I know that's something that you and I have done earlier on this spring, that we swapped some plants. So where was the motivation and the thinking behind starting that group?
I see things like fishing swaps where they trade tackle and things like that. So I thought one day to myself, it'd be cool if this existed for plants. And I Googled it, and I saw a native plant group in Texas. There's only a couple of them that did this, somewhere in the Midwest. And I reached out to both of them, asked them, what do they do, how do they do it, and whatnot. And they got back to me, and my thought process was they focused on one big event. And my thought process was, let's just do this year round, and when people can do it, because we're all pretty busy and we're all different schedules. So my thought process was, whether it be fall, middle of summer, spring, if you have plants to give away, you need plants, you can do it whenever you want. And I thought it'd be a good idea, because this stuff can get pretty expensive to do, to plant this many plants. So I thought it was a good way to help people out and myself in getting these gardens started and keeping the cost down.
Awesome. You have a vegetable garden, and I think some folks think that they have to have their plant, their flower garden and their vegetable garden separate, but I love that it's right in the middle of it. What made you decide to put it here, or was it always here and you just built around it? And have you noticed any difference with your vegetables after having a native plant garden?
This was actually planted in the same time. So I just figured pollinators, or the veggies need pollinators. So what better way to help promote that than planting the middle of your native garden? So this is a full sun area. This is the most sun. So I chose that area because it gets the most sun. And like I said, pollinators are all around it. They'll recognize it. And I would have liked to do it in 2 different years or see if there was a difference, but I can't speak to the difference. But I'm sure it is beneficial. It can only help.
I definitely noticed in my garden, because I had a vegetable garden for a few years before I started doing native gardens around it, and a total difference in the amount of birds that come visit my garden and eat the bugs that are bothering my vegetables. And I think it's really wonderful, and I know a lot of farmers are doing pollinator hedgerows and you know, native plantings around their vegetable farm garden rows so that they bring in more pollinators. But you know, when you're bringing in more pollinators, you're also supporting the whole rest of that trophic ladder, where you know your birds are going in and they're eating your beetles or slugs, no, not slugs, but you know, other insects that are bothering your plants. So I think it's really wonderful to see that here. And even as we were talking, I've seen a bunch of moths and butterflies flittering around. So, you know, they're enjoying their natives and your vegetables at the same time.
We spend a lot of time out here. We have a bench that we put underneath our tree over here. We sit out here a lot of mornings and a lot of evenings, and really enjoy ourselves out here. Also helps with your nuisance pests like mosquitoes. Doing this really brings in a lot of those predators to those nuisance insects like mosquitoes, and keeps those populations down. So by native gardening and converting this to a native area, brings in those insects, those beneficial insects, to keep those populations of insects maybe that we don't want around, so we can really enjoy our time out here more often. And just a good way to do integrated pest management. We don't spray out here, we don't do anything like that. We let nature, you know, take care of itself.
So, Andrew, can you tell me about a little bit of the lessons learned that you've had while doing this experience? What you really liked and worked well for you, and some of the challenges that you've come across?
All right, so deer protection first. I came from Brick, New Jersey, Jersey Shore, so deer really wasn't too big of an issue there. Here it is a very big issue. So deer protection really is key. And then from a plant perspective, always doing your research and, you know, what likes what conditions, so this way you're not, you know, wasting money and time. But what I wish I did a little bit more is look into faster growing species to get some of the bigger areas taken care of, in terms of those plants spreading. And then you could always go and thin things out later on and introduce some maybe slower growing species. And knowing now what I know about those fast moving species and with the native plant group and being able to offer them up. So that's really what I'm trying to do in the next year or two is get more fast moving species, growing species in, and as I don't need them, offer them up to neighbors, offer them up on the native plant swap group, and then put in those, you know, maybe slower growing species mixing in with those. My next big thing here is underneath my trees, underneath the dogwood here and underneath the weeping cherry. Really important for caterpillars when they come down. They usually come down right here, right underneath the trees, and so it's really important for our native bird species to have access to that food. So knowing that now, I do have some natives under here, but they're not fast moving, fast growing. I'm going to start adding maybe this year in the fall those faster growing species, so this way when caterpillars do drop down, they have an area where they just don't die. They need a food resource underneath, so I'm going to look into some faster moving species underneath some of my trees here. I think those are my big next steps here, and then, you know, just slowly filling in some of the bare areas, like I said, with those native fast moving species. And then for my bigger bushes that are not native but provide a lot of cover, one of the things I've done is started growing vines over them. So I started growing native vines. So that's something I just thought of that. I didn't see anywhere. I was just like, I don't want to take out these big bushes.
Sure.
So I'm going to start adding more vines around it to get over those non-native bushes and provide some type of benefit to our native species.
That's great. So I see that you have the coral honeysuckle, and I'm sure that that hummingbird that we saw earlier was coming over to take a sip. But to, you know, close out, do you have any resources that you recommend, or just places in general for people to start looking if they want to start going down your route of converting your lawn to native gardens? Anything that was, you know, your favorite resource, or something that it's kind of like your tried and true that you always like to go back and reference?
Well, the Sourlands Conservancy I know does have a method of how to do this. Like I said, Phobos has a method how to do this. And I forget my favorite resource, to be honest with you. I compiled so many at this point that I put on the Facebook swap group, and I have a running Google Doc of it. But yeah, just whatever fits the way you want to do your garden. Whatever methodology, that's what you have to go with. I found a blend of 2 or 3 methods that worked for me, and how I wanted to do this. There's some things that I wish I did a little differently, but overall, using those methods, combining those methods, and trying things out, and not being afraid to fail, and knowing things might die, and you have to learn from that. And I think using those resources and then experimenting a little on your own is always good to do, and see what works and see what doesn't work for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it, that sometimes things are not going to work out, and that's okay, because you can always try again next season. That it's, not a failure, it's just a learning experience. So thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you.
It was wonderful talking to you. And if you want to learn more, go to our website at www.sourland.org. Thank you.